Oh, Bobo, where's the word, where's the vibes? What's going on?
Let's do it, my man. We vibes today. I know let's do it. We didn't have papers here.
What are the latest, why? Where's the latest, why?
You see what's going on out in the field, why? What the fellas are them doing, why? You see that Andrea girl, boy, God, she's sweet, boy.
Real Martin, boy.
Angel, boy, I wish you rest in peace, boy. Martin, over there, boy.
I'm telling you, why, people, boy.
But I have a composition here, boy, that I, boy. I was going to share it with you, boy. You was hard time?
Yeah, well, you must see what you're working with now?
True.
Yeah, let me see what you're working with.
You feel we should make a video and share it for the nation, boy, for the country, boy?
Yeah, we got to put it out there so they will understand what's going on.
Yeah, boy. We got to let the country know what's going on, too, boy. You know? You know this man is way, boy. You know leadership inside the game, boy. What up, dogger?
One.
Trinidad and Tobago, we hurting. And I mean we hurting, we real hurting, eh? We hurting, we are hurting, we hurting. Or at least the majority of us are feeling hurt about the state of affairs in our country today. When will the pain end, Mr. Prime Minister? And we are not just hurting as a result of crime and violence against our women and children. We are also hurting as a direct result of segregation, discrimination, unemployment, and mass poverty. Today it is a very sad time in our country's history, and the sad fact is it is not the first, the second, the third, may not be the last time in our country's history. Today, the level of grief, the level of fear, the level of anxiety, the level of despair amongst the people, especially our young women and children and elderly folks, is at a different higher level as a direct result of coward, weak, visionless, and corrupted so-called public leaders that are constantly failing in the mandate given to them to govern a country in a productive, disciplined, and tolerant order as they had promised they can do. I believe in us as a people who can do great things for the betterment and development of our nation, Trinidad and Tobago. We poor people, we must unite. I also believe that the people of today, in the midst of all the evil that is taking place around us, and those that are grieving the loss of our young women, men, and children in the society, I believe that we all have a responsibility to ensure and to make positive contributions towards solutions whenever issues of national importance arises and identified and highlight itself in such a way that we are witnessing today in our nation. Firstly, we must identify the root cause of the problems we are facing in the society. National leaders, you must know that. By understanding where the problems are originating from, only then and their workable solutions can be applied to gain the expected results required. Many fly-by-night leaders who don't even know what it is like to go to bed hungry and to wake up still hungry with nothing to eat. These people are holding influencing office and leadership positions today in our society. And these said people, they are labeling the misguided youths in our country as demons, as monsters, as cockroaches, and other discriminatory and derogatory names. These youths need help. But who can give one wrong for forming such a bold perception against these misguided, illiterate youths? When one is seeing the attitudes and witnessing the lifestyles they live in, some in cases experiencing firsthand the violent behavior of those said youths. But after all the labeling and all the name calling and all the finger pointing, the problems remain the same and is hurting and shaming our people in our beloved country, home and abroad. The level of abuse today amongst our women and children who are perceived by many men to be weak and vulnerable in our communities is on a different level, and it must stop. The population are baffled by the level of hate and violence that are emanating from the hearts of the youths and adult men of today in our nation. Trinidad and Tobago, I, Steve McGilvery, I want to tell you all here today with the root cause, where it is planted, where it stems from, where it is flourishing and coming from in our nation here today, and I want you to pay attention. And once it is my boy here say to make this video and share it, it's because I know all of you share it too, right? The government must take affirmative action with the support of the people to apply solution, Mr. Prime Minister. A problem must first be identified. Solutions is the cure. Identifying the mess is the test. Question: where are the problems in our society stemming from that creates the mess we are facing today in our society? The blind eye that is willfully being turned against all those poor, depressed ghetto communities by the capitalist super-rich elite teams in our society. The undisputed corruption in high places amongst governing leaders and their associates who are supposed to be role models and leaders. They are the biggest problems today in our nation that causes the escalation of crime and poverty to persist on a different level to the detriment of the most vulnerable in our society, women, children, and at-risk youths. Their weak, visionless leadership style contributes greatly to the escalation of crime and violence in all its dirty and nasty forms in our society today. That is the true and real cause of our problem in Trinidad and Tobago here today. The truth is, most of the violent crimes today in our society are stemming from areas classified by the central government as hotspot communities. When normal villagers and law-abiding citizens are living in fear and have no voice in their own communities as a result of illegal activities, and they get discriminated against in the wider society solely as a result of their address, to which they absolutely have no control over. Many of the youths in these classified hotspot areas are early school dropouts with little to no life skills training that will enable them to get gainful employment. Many have grown up in broken and abusive homes. Some don't even have a mother or father and are on their own from a very young age with no mentor, no positive father figure to guide them on the right path. Many single mothers try their very best in the ghetto to look after their kids and to send them to school, some failing their responsibilities as parents solely as a result of their financial position, compounded by a lack of education in life skills training, and also their address makes it extra difficult to get gainful employment. Classified hotspot communities. Many of the youths in those areas are being raised by not too educated single mothers who are the ones mostly vulnerable to break the law and easily to be influenced into illegal gang activities. And in many cases, mothers lose control over their kids in these ghetto communities as a direct result of bad influences. The influencers and misleaders are the poor early school dropouts of the generation before this one, who are the now senior law breakers. And the cycle of crime, poverty, and violence continue on to another generation to arise in the nation. On the next level of evil, supported by ignorance, arrogance, illiteracy, pills, alcohol, marijuana, and high-powered rifles. Hope you all follow me here and see what I'm saying. The only cause that can actually be allowing the identified above lifestyle to persist and prolong in these areas, which is today affecting the wider society in many forms, is weak governance. It is the failures of the elected members of parliament, those parliamentarians of today. When they had presented themselves to the people for election, they had sworn and promised to work for the people that voted for them. What changes that? They were all democratically voted and selected into office of governance and is being highly paid, and are also given other allowances including tax exemptions to alleviate and solve the problems that have been identified and affecting residents in their free way of living. All classified hotspots in Trinidad. The political representatives of these areas are sitting members of the governing government of the day in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. They does nothing productive towards infrastructure development for employment, nor for agriculture, fishing, no farming, no culture and sports events for the people, nothing for the upliftment of the women and children in their areas. These MPs should be ashamed of themselves for all the sweet talk and mamagai and failed election promises after they get into office, and they're talking about safe seat. My community, Silats, for example, the people of that area are yet to see or hear of their elected MP, Mr. Kit Scotland, plans towards executing developmental and educational programs for the youths, the young girls and single mothers in that area, which will enable them to be certified and be in a better position to seek gainful employment. Building families, creating deployment, boosting the economy, lowering the crime rate, fixing Trinidad and Tobago, starting in the communities, Mr. Prime Minister. The problem today is that of total misrepresentation by the elected members of our parliament for all those government classified hotspot areas in Trinidad and Tobago. Though we can agree that the problems are complex and broad, but having identified above main parts of the existing problems, what are the solutions that is needed to bring guaranteed long-term results? The government must take charge of its people. Our country is full of wealth in various forms of natural resources. Plus, we have access to foreign aid in many forms, including military from various first world countries. Why are we living like this, Mr. Prime Minister? The government of the day, the Honorable Prime Minister, recently told the country loud and clear that one should live justice and not talk justice. He also said that the upholder is worse than the thief. He even spoke about being hypocritical. Oh my. I am suggesting to you, Mr. Prime Minister, to immediately start mandating your elected members of parliament to meet with the people who voted them into office and focus on the development of the poor and underprivileged in their constituencies, and stop leaving the impression on the nation as though you are leading a legal gang of consters, with all due respect to all. Start now by targeting the problems. Stop neglecting your responsibilities as elected leaders, and also stop casting blame on the weak and on the poor and on the least fortunate in the society for your own failings and shortcomings, Mr. Prime Minister. Stop passing draconian laws to incarcerate the poor and illiterate youths of our country, those that are most vulnerable as a direct result of poverty in their family and community. Those are the ones that are being misguided and used by the elders and others that knows better to break the law. This must stop. Honorable Prime Minister, you must start by now targeting the real problems in those ghetto areas. Stop playing politics to the detriment of those single mothers and their misguided children's future, well-being and development of their depressed community. I suggest to you, Mr. Prime Minister, that now is the best time for you to move in the direction of setting up an effective rehabilitation program, namely the National Anti-Gang Amnesty. Putting the Commissioner of Police or the Minister of National Security or both in charge of this program with a view of getting rehabilitation programs established and effectively managed and maintained in all those ghetto areas, with a view and expectation of getting the desired results required that will lead the youths in another direction, with an alternative to do something new and different from what they grew up to be thinking is normal. Time to act, Mr. Prime Minister. I have the plan here for you. I have the plan on paper here for you. Give me a chance. At present, Mr. Prime Minister, there is no infrastructure in the prisons to facilitate the rehabilitation of the large number of remandees. And for those that you and your business team are planning to send in, you are doing a great injustice to the prisons officers. Many at risk and potential gang members, young men and adults in the prisons, they are badly in need of rehabilitation. In the prison system today is no speedy trials, no bail, no meaningful effective rehabilitation programs. Many youths that are breaking the law is following behind the generation before them, some meeting their own fathers in the prison. These youths start off by first-time offenders, as first-time offenders doing petty crimes like larceny and robberies. First-time offenders in the prison system today are living with serious underworld connections. They do not move on to more. They then move on to more serious crimes, becoming repeated offenders in the process. Another generation has born. As it is, with jail with no rehabilitation, jail with no bail, jail with no court trials, you're guilty until proven otherwise. Think about it, Mr. Prime Minister, with the understanding of your own constitution, which stated that the parliament should not cause the arbitrary detention, imprisonment, nor exile of any person. After you holding a man who has been deemed by the court to be innocent on the remand yard for years from his family and loved ones, with no bail, no trial, no rehabilitation, violating your own constitution. Years of mental pain, physical suffering, and suicidal thinking. The court just released a man back into the society in a dreadful frame of mind, full of revenge and a heart full of hate and animosity, and with nothing positive on a daily basis in their hometowns to do, and with no new life skills apart from what they have learned the hard way in the prison system. They resorted right back to their old ways and to the only thing that they grow up knowing to do, breaking the law to survive. The same lifestyle that first landed them in the prison system, only this is on a more serious charges this time. A dreadful cycle, Mr. Prime Minister. Focus now on prison rehabilitation. As the leader of our nation, why are you doing our law-abiding citizens, the poor and underprivileged, this great and just? Your present approach, Mr. Prime Minister, is filling up the nation's inhumane prisons with poor illiterate ghetto youths with no rehabilitation in place for them. This must be a money-making thing. Your present crime-fighting strategy, Mr. Prime Minister, is what creating the monsters that are confronting your own leadership and distressing the lives and property and goodwill and freedom of our citizens and visitors of this country. Presently, your plan and approach is definitely not a cure for the many existing problems in the society of Trinidad and Tobago today, Mr. Prime Minister. This must be a money-making thing. Who gain it? Who is the suppliers? It is like the longer men stay in the prison system, it is more invoices for goods and services keep multiplying. All these companies and businesses is like more men in jail, no trials, no bail, no nothing. It's the more goods and services they supply. And who in charge of these companies, the Blue Waters and all of the things with the canteen selling? Who supplying them things to the prison? It is like a money-making thing, you know? So, my brother, this is the vibe, sir. This is the rhythm we are waiting. It's gone, share?
And that.
Alright. People, that's the message, that's the word. Love, love, and respect.